I recently watched one of the latest interviews with Eddie Hearn on IFL TV, and Coogan was asking him about who were the other opponents that were in the running to fight Anthony Joshua on April 9th, other than Charles Martin for the IBF title. And he mentioned a whole list of names, but the name that stood out to me as most interesting was Hughie Fury. That's right. According to Eddie Hearn, Hughie Fury was actually offered the fight against Anthony Joshua on April 9th. And I'm obviously assuming, it seems logical to assume, that Hughie Fury turned it down. And this is not the first time, by the way, that Joshua's team have made an approach to the Fury team with a view to making an Anthony Joshua Hughie Fury fight. And as yet, Hughie Fury and his team have not taken the fight. And I remember a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where Peter Fury, who's a very candid type of character, he's not the kind of guy who really beats around the bush much. And he was asked several times, actually, in different interviews, what about Hughie Fury versus Joshua? And Peter Fury basically said, look, Hughie's still a young guy. He's developing. Joshua is Tyson Fury's age. So what he was basically telling you is that Hughie Fury, in his opinion, wasn't ready to fight an Anthony Joshua. He'd prefer to continue Hughie's development and what have you. And I can't really knock him for that. But I have to, raise the point, because there's been a lot of talk over the past few weeks that Anthony Joshua's actually been ducking people. Now, maybe one or two of them were legitimate ducks. I think he realized or his team realized after the Dillian Whyte fight that he weren't ready for David Haye. So Haye was like, yeah, let's get the fight on. And you could say, if you wanted, that Anthony Joshua ducked David Haye. David Haye's vastly more experienced. He's at a much later stage of his career. Anthony Joshua, for a 15-fight professional, he's not fighting terrible opposition for 15 fights in. As I've mentioned in many other videos, you look at Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko 15 fights in. Look at the guys they were fighting. Look at Tyson Fury 15 fights in. Look at the guys he was fighting. So Anthony Joshua's level of opposition 15 fights in is not especially bad at all. It's certainly better than, for example, Deontay Wilder 15 fights in. And that's not a diss on Wilder. I'm just telling you the truth. So, yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that people, I've noticed since the Dillian Whyte fight, have been saying, oh, Joshua's ducking this guy, ducking that guy. They also talked about him ducking Joseph Parker. Maybe you could see that as a duck. Although Parker did say, come to New Zealand and fight. I mean, who the hell goes to New Zealand to fight? What big, well-known fighter do you know that goes to New Zealand to fight? The money is in the United States. It's in places like Germany. It's in the UK, etc., etc. It's certainly not in New Zealand. So whether that was a serious offer or not by Parker's team, I don't know. But here we have a situation where, okay, fair enough. Maybe Joshua has avoided one or two fighters because maybe he's not ready for those particular guys yet. But it seems as though Hughie Fury has been offered a fight against Joshua several times, including most recently an opportunity to fight Joshua on April 9th. And he's been turning these opportunities down. I don't really hear many people talk about that. And as I always say on my channel, and you know what? I'm not even dissing Hughie Fury for that. I'm not dissing him for that. If they feel like he needs further development, then so be it. Hughie's in the learning stages as well. There's no need to match him up against Joshua, but, it's only fair and right to say, look, at this stage of their careers, they're a similar amount of fights in. And by the way, bringing Hughie Fury's age into it, I think is a moot point. I don't really see that as overly significant. Yes, you do. Different people mature physically at different ages, but how old is Hughie Fury now? He must be like 21, 22 years old. I mean, at that age, Muhammad Ali was competing against top flight fighters. And when he beat Sonny Liston, I believe he was, what was he, 21, 22 years old, something like that, when he beat Liston. And that's Ali. And Ali wasn't a particularly powerful fighter or anything like that. He certainly hadn't completely matured. He was still kind of gangly at that age. Obviously, Mike Tyson, although Mike Tyson was extremely developed physically for an 18-year-old, for a 20-year-old when he won the world title. He was very developed. So yeah, it's not really about age when it comes to a fighter maturing physically. I mean, it's somewhat to do with age, but fighters mature at different rates. A guy like Mike Tyson was pretty much a man. He had a man and a man's strength. You know, he was a man and he had a man's strength by the time he was 18, easily. He was as strong as all these, most of these guys he was fighting who were late 20s, early 30s. Lennox Lewis, I know, when he was a young guy in his, early mid 20s, he was extremely physically strong. So, I don't really see the whole situation about using Hughie Fury's age and saying, he's not old enough yet to fight Anthony Joshua because Joshua is a few years older. I think it's not really about if you're old enough, it's about if you're good enough. I'm sure Hughie Fury will fill out some, but Anthony Joshua himself is not developed completely technically. I think Hughie Fury is probably a technically more developed fighter than Anthony Joshua. Joshua might be more developed physically. So that's an even situation, then, isn't it? You got a guy with better skills against a guy with more physical maturity. So, the age thing, I don't really buy that as a reason. I just think they don't believe Hughie Fury is ready to take that type of risk at this point in his career against Anthony Joshua. I'm sure they want to build him up and, take him along at a steady pace. And I respect that. Don't get it twisted. I do respect that. And I think it's the right thing to do. In fact, in many ways, I prefer the way that Hughie Fury's career has been handled over the way that Anthony Joshua's career has been handled. I think Joshua being in the spotlight so much when he's so inexperienced is mainly a bad thing. And I've said this many times. I like the way that Hughie Fury is being brought along under the radar. It's kind of the traditional way to bring up a fighter. And I think it will pay dividends in the long run. So yeah, little bit of a ramble this video, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there on this situation where it seems that once again Hughie Fury has avoided a fight with Joshua. Again, I'm not dissing him for it. I'm not saying this, that, and the other, but I just do feel the information has to be out there so people know. Because I did a video about Joshua ducking, some people say ducking Joseph Parker. And obviously I've now mentioned the Hay situation where Joshua could have probably fought Hay on April 9th, but decided against that. So it's only fair I also mentioned there are people avoiding Joshua himself. Also, Derek Chisora, I already did a video about that. Derek Chisora did avoid Anthony Joshua. I don't know where this idea that it was actually Joshua that turned down Chisora. No, it was Chisora that turned down Joshua. And you could see it in interviews with Derek Chisora himself. He, in several interviews, said, I don't want the Joshua fight. He said it before the Dillian Whyte fight, and he said it after the Dillian Whyte fight. In several interviews. So all this stuff about, it being Joshua that didn't want Chisora, I don't know where people are getting this from. I don't know what the British board apparently said something, or I don't know. That information doesn't seem to be correct. Even Sauerland, I think it was Callie Sauerland, came out and said, basically, Derek don't want to fight at this time. So that is what that is. Anyway, people, drop your comments below about everything I talked about in this video. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.